Hi, I'm April. I am a singer-songwriter and music teacher, and today we're going to be talking about using big words in your songwriting. So a couple of days ago, I got a question on Instagram about how to grow your vocabulary for your songwriting, which kind of led me down a rabbit hole of thinking about vocabulary and how we use vocabulary in songwriting. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to grow your vocabulary, whether you should use big words in your songs, and kind of how to use those big words in your songs in a way that doesn't feel super pretentious. So let's start with the question of whether we should use big words in our songwriting. I've got sunshine on a cloudy day. When it's cold outside, I've got the month of May. I'll double check this later, but I'm pretty positive that there isn't a single 3-syllable word in that entire song. But does that make it a bad song? Absolutely not. In fact, it's probably one of the greatest pop songs ever written, as far as I'm concerned. So why is it so good without using any of these really big words? Well, first of all, it feels authentic and it feels conversational. When you listen to this song, it's clear, it's concise, and it makes perfect sense. You don't have to listen to the song with a dictionary in your hand. It's a song about someone who's really exciting to be around, someone who brings brightness with them when they walk into a room. So because of that, we don't necessarily need to be bogged down by language. Instead, we can just use really simple, bright, clear messages. I guess you'd say, what can make me feel this way? My girl. Every single one of those words is one syllable. And because of that, it's really easy to write an effective melody around it. And there's no real analysis that necessarily needs to be done. Though I'd argue that you can, in fact, analyze this song and you would come up with some really interesting things. But the most important thing to really notice is that it is a pop song. It's a really simple concept, and it's a song that can appeal to anybody. It's a wide range of people who can listen to it, which means that a 5-year-old can sit down, listen to the song, and really love it. On the other end of the spectrum, you've got someone like Colin Meloy from the Decemberists, who, personally, I adore, but his lyric writing is not exactly for the faint of heart. Because sometimes you do need to sit down with a dictionary in order to understand what he's talking about. Sometimes it feels like you're reading a novel when you're listening to his records. In fact, the Decemberists' record, The Hazards of Love, is a concept album. So when you're listening to it, you really do feel like you're part of the narrative and you can really swim through the story, as it were. 15 Lysol maidens lay along in their bower. 14 occupations paid to pass the idle hour. Margaret heaves a sigh, her hands clasped to her thigh, singing, oh, the hazards of love, singing, oh, the hazards of love. So this song is obviously much more complicated than the previous song. The way I see it, it's about knowing who your audience is and being authentic. If you're writing an album for children, chances are you're not going to want to be using words like bereft or ubiquitous, because those are really big words for your target audience. But if the people who are listening to your music, or the people who you want to be listening to your music, are a little bit older, who really like getting wrapped up in really specific stories that take place in historical eras, then absolutely go for those big words. But that also doesn't mean that you have to stretch your vocabulary so incredibly far that it doesn't sound like you. And keep in mind that Colin Meloy gets a lot of criticism for using really big language. Whether or not his audience in particular really loves it, it is definitely not for everybody, and that's an important thing to consider when you're writing. Oh, you are in my blood like holy wine, you taste so bitter and so sweet. Oh, I could drink a case of you, darling, and I would that particular example, we have some kind of moderately sized words, nothing like too out of your high school vocabulary quiz, but nothing super simplistic either. It feels kind of somewhere in the middle, which feels about right given what we know of Joni Mitchell's persona and kind of how we see her as an artist. This totally fits with the artist, the song itself, and the audience that she's writing for. Most people are not going to be writing only 1 to 2 syllable words throughout their song, and most people aren't going to be using entirely really flowery purple prose language. So chances are you're gonna fall somewhere in between, and that's a good thing. If you find yourself on either end of the spectrum, that's great too. But just make sure that you're doing it in order to be authentic to the sound that you are going for. I think it can be a habit of a lot of new writers especially to just use a ton of really, really big language just because they think it'll make them sound smart, or they think that it's going to add some sort of validity to whatever it is that they're writing. But songs can be smart and good and valid and poetic, with or without really flowery language. If you do happen to want to use really big language in your music, and if you feel that it's authentic to your own sound and to the audience that you're writing for and the things that you want to be writing, if you can go out of your way to use that word in context and to really find ways to tie it into your life or into your own way of thinking, you're going to have a much easier time actually memorizing that vocabulary word. As for finding vocabulary words, for me, it's just doing a lot of reading and watching a lot of movies and listening to a lot of music that uses bigger words. But you could even go as far as to look up lists of SAT words if you wanted to build your language that way. But no matter what kind of media you're consuming, pay attention to what those words are that you don't know and maybe write them down. That way when you sit down to write, you've got this really awesome new word that you can look up and learn how to use. So with all that said, I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, be sure to let me know in the comments. Maybe tell me your favorite big fancy word. And be sure to subscribe to the channel and ring that little bell to be notified the next time I post.